Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on the 65 Chevelle today, the Malibu SS, and what we're going to be tackling today is removing all the front suspension, including the steering gear. We need to paint underneath the hood here, and besides that, we are actually replacing the old stamped A-arms with tubular front suspension. The car's getting disc brakes all the way around, so all this needs to come off so we can get in there and start mocking up the new stuff. So let's jump in here, get this stuff torn off, and see how it looks. Okay, I got my coveralls on so I can crawl around in this dirty mess and not worry about it. So the plan is to try to remove the upper and lower A-arms totally connected to the spindle so I don't have to, I can just take them off as a unit. And then what we're going to do is just take them loose, get a jack underneath there, and get these, try to swing up and out of the way, and then we'll just release the spring. Before we can do that, we're going to need to get the brake lines loose, the sway bar, and the steering gear off here. So let's get the steering gear removed. Shouldn't be too tough. I sprayed everything with some penetrant, some PB Blaster, so hopefully all these things, that one came loose pretty easy. And if you guys haven't seen how to bust a ball joint loose or a steering gear knuckle, it's fairly easy without a pickle fork. Really, you shouldn't be using a pickle fork anyways, because all it does is ruin the seals or screw up everything else around it when you're hammering on it. So you just put a pry bar in. If you can find a place to put some leverage on it. See if I can get this here. We're just going to push down and then smack the ball right at the joint right there, right where it's connected. Make a liar out of me here. I can't get a good swing at this thing. There we go. Just popped. Okay, so all you're doing is basically prying down on the part you want to remove and then hitting the knuckle where the tapers locked it in. And what that does, it's Malibu steel. And when you hit it, it shocks it and releases that. So it's way better than using a pickle fork like the old days. And you know, they come right off. So that one's loose. I'm going to go ahead and take the idler arm off, just unbolt it from the chassis since we need that off and out of the way anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and get the tie rod ends off of the spindles, and then we'll move over and let's start getting these A-arms off. Just push down. Just like that. We're going to be reusing these tie rod ends and the drag link and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and set those aside, and then we'll tackle getting this stuff off. All right, let's get the rest of this off. Fuel line out of the way. Okay, that's done. Now on the 65, I do know on the 67, the bumper, there's a rock down inside there. On the 67, the bumper bracket actually blocks this bolt, the upper bolt, from coming out, and it appears the same deal on the 65. Now I do not want to move the bumper. It's well adjusted, and I don't want to take it loose just to get this bolt out. So what I'm going to do is get the other two loose and just back this one out and pull the steering gear away and just leave the bolt in place. Then after we're done painting, we'll just hold that up there and just turn that and get that in there. So, but interesting, I found a washer and a rock down inside that little hole right there. All right, this is just going to take a lot of slow turning with a wrench. Walk that out of there. There we go. That's going to be a two-man job putting it back on. Yeah. Okay, we got everything pretty much removed. We got the sway bar off, steering linkage, everything. I've got the shocks out. So it's time to try to get these A-arms off. And the biggest problem with doing this without a spring compressor, I've just got the jack out on the end where the lower ball joint is, and that's enough to give me just enough leverage to compress that spring just enough so when I take this loose, it doesn't, shoot out. But there's no engine or transmission in this thing, so the car is wanting to come off the, off the jack stands instead of compressing the spring. I tried going at the shock mount, but that was too close, so I had to go out on the end of the A-arm to get enough leverage to get that spring just to compress. And if I actually stand on here with my all of 160 pounds, it actually pushes down a little bit. So I think we're right on the limit of getting these off. So let's, the idea, I want to take these bolts off, take the nuts off, and then drive the bolts in, and then just try to lift this A-arm up and swing it over, and then lower the jack down a little bit, and then we can take the lower A-arm off. This car actually drove really nice, so it's not like the steering was horrible. The wheels are pretty big. Let's see what happens. Doesn't feel like any weights on it, it's just pulled in. Whoa! Woohoo! That spring had a little more spring than I thought. Okay, I got one bolt out. We got the last bolt to go here. Hopefully this thing doesn't fall. I'm going to back up a little bit. Spin this over. Slow. My hands on it. There we go. Oof. Out. One piece. Okay, got pretty much everything off I want to get off. The car is getting a little light. Now I've got the rear jack stands just about where the trailing arms for the rear end go, and I can pick that thing up off the front jack stand. So it's getting a little light in the front. The rear end's still in it, so it's kind of trying to tip it back. So we'll address that here in a little bit. So once we get the new brakes mocked up, then we're going to know where, what everything we need and what we can discard. So, but that's about it right there. Now, I think what I want to do is put the rear tires back on this thing and put some rollers on the front here and roll it outside and clean it. I didn't get it as clean as I would like with all the A-arms on it and everything. They're pretty dirty. And it's pretty greasy, and I'm dripping brake fluid on my foot right now as we speak. So I think what I want to do is roll it outside and get it a good clean. So let's back away here, and we'll take a quick look at what we got going on, and then we'll get this thing outside. Okay, let's see where we're at here. We got everything off that I want to take off. I went ahead and removed the motor mounts as well. 6 bolts, I'm already in it this far, so it's not that big a deal. So it's pretty grimy up in here. We got some welds that don't look very attractive. Right here, this is pretty bad. I'll check that really carefully to make sure that there was no collision damage and somebody re-welded that. I've seen that kind of work before. It's a 65. I mean, that's just the quality of work back in then, back in 65. So we'll hit all this with a flapper wheel. On a grinder and get it cleaned up, wire wheel it. We got some rust problems over here from the battery box, leaking down on there, but we'll clean that up. It's not corroded really bad. Other than that, it looks pretty good. It just needs to be rolled outside and cleaned up. It's looking really good. Kind of, take all this stuff off. It's a lot of work, but everything's going back on, so it's well worth it to get this painted up real nice. But we just got to get it outside and get it cleaned up. Speaking of cleaning up, I noticed up here on the ceiling, when I was trying to get that drag link loose from the steering gear box, I spun it kind of fast, and it shot up some power steering fluid up on my ceiling, so I got to get that cleaned up. So over here is everything we just took off. We got the motor mounts, the sway bar. It looks like they put new parts on it. So, and all those bushings and everything look good. So that's just going to get cleaned up and painted. The drag link, the tie rods, idler arm, all that's going to get cleaned up and painted. The steering gear box is not leaking. That's just what ran down from the fittings being open on the top. And then the shocks, it's not in the budget to put new shocks all the way around, so we're going to reuse those, get those cleaned up. And over here, I did stand the springs up side by side, and they're exactly the same length and height. So that's a good thing. That means one hasn't collapsed or anything. So, and those, I don't know if those are factory. There doesn't look like factory tags on them, but we'll check that out as well. And the upper and lower A-arms on both sides, those will be available. So if anybody's watching this, send me a comment. They look in great shape. Of course, the bushings are, pretty much clapped out. But all in all, I don't see any collision damage or anything. Probably, need new ball joints, new bushings. But those are in great shape. And if you're doing a four-wheel drum car, all that is available. So send me a comment if you're interested. Other than that, the owner's probably going to post it on Facebook Marketplace or somewhere and try to sell it. So let's get the tires back on this thing and get it rolled outside and get it cleaned up. We got to get Jake out of the way first. He's taking a nap back there. Okay, I got the wheels back on the back, floor jacket in the front. I've got a couple of 2x4s back there. It's a little downhill slope, so I don't want it to get away from me and end up backing right into the GTO. That'd be bad. Let's see if we can get this rolling here. Maybe Jake will help. Whoa, nearly. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Okay, I put a piece of plastic over the firewall. There's some holes right where the steering column goes through, and I've got some bare body filler there. So the last thing I want to do is spray a bunch of degreaser and then grease and have it hit that body filler and soak in. So I've got it soaking right now. Sprayed some degreaser on it, up underneath and on top here. We're gonna let that soak till I see it maybe start to dry. We're going to get the pressure washer out and then get this thing cleaned up really nice. Okay, let's get this thing cleaned up. Okay guys, got it all clean and rolled back in the shop. It's nice and dry. Everything looks good. Like I said earlier, a little concerned about some of this weld right here. Once I got it cleaned off, it's pretty janky looking. I don't see a seam anywhere else, so it doesn't look like somebody sectioned on a new snout on the front here. It's just kind of crappy welds. This side looks good. That was done by the journeyman, and this side was done by the apprentice, I guess, on the assembly line. So we're going to get a grinder on here and get that all cleaned up, and if it looks weak, I'll re-weld it and we'll make it look nice and pretty. But other than that, we're looking really good here. It's not greasy. I think I pretty much got everything off. So we're ready to get in here and start doing some cleanup, but that's going to be the owner doing that. The next step for me will be mocking up some front end suspension on here to see how it looks, see how everything lines up, and maybe get the springs in and get the wheels on and lower it down, see how it looks. So that's about it for this one. Really happy to get that dirty work out of the way. Okay guys, that just about wraps up my kind of dirty project for the day. What have you been working on? You've been out in the shop, in the garage, getting on those projects. I know you got one. Let's get on that thing and make some progress and send me some pics. I'd love to post them at the end of the video. So the Chevelle, this dirty job is done, we can actually start moving forward with actually putting stuff back on the car. So I'm kind of excited about getting into and start opening some of these boxes behind me and putting on some of those new goodies. So that'll be on the next video. But for now, we've got some firewall work to do, a little bit more filling, a lot of sanding. We'll get the owner over here to get to work on that. And the chassis, the frame here, it needs probably a flapper wheel with some 80 grit on it, and just go over the whole thing and just get it all cleaned up real nice, and so we can get some black paint in here. That's all for today. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and mash that bell icon so you get notifications every time I release a new video. We'll see you on the next one.